Hold your breath, Emily, because if they hear your heart, the king will know you are alive. Emily Harper pressed one shaking hand over her mouth and crouched beneath the loose floorboards of Silverpine Pack's kitchen, where the air smelled of ash, old apples, and rain-soaked wool. Above her, 3 patrol wolves moved through the room in heavy boots, their lantern lights slipping through the cracks in thin gold lines across her pale skin. She did not move. She did not blink. Even the silver pendant at her throat felt too loud, its tiny chain resting against her collarbone like a warning. For 10 years, that pendant had kept her scent locked away. To the pack, Emily was nothing but a scentless omega, a servant girl with quiet hands and lowered eyes. To herself, she was a secret buried under silence. Tonight, silence was the only thing keeping her breathing. "Check the pantry," one guard muttered. Alpha Reed said no one leaves before the royal inspection. Emily's ribs tightened. The royal inspection. Alpha King Nathaniel Cross was coming before midnight, traveling only with his closest guards, and every wolf in the territory had been ordered into the Great Hall. Nathaniel Cross did not need noise to announce him. He hated noise. They said he could stand in a room of 200 wolves and hear the one heart that lied. They said he hunted without following scent trails, that he could track a runaway through 5 miles of pine forest by the rhythm of their breathing alone. Other alphas trusted their noses. The king listened. Emily had survived because no one could smell her. But what good was a hidden scent against a man who could hear fear? The boards groaned above her. Dust drifted down, tickling her nose, and she fought the desperate urge to cough. One sound, one broken breath, and they would drag her out before Madison Reed and the others, before the pack that loved turning weakness into entertainment. The pendant pulsed once, cold against her skin, and Emily remembered her grandmother's warning. Never let them frighten you into taking it off. What sleeps inside you is not weakness. It is a call. A boot stopped directly above her head. Emily froze. Her heart, traitorous and terrified, beat harder. Thump, thump, thump. The guard shifted, as if he had heard something beneath the floor. Then, from somewhere beyond the kitchen walls, every candle in the corridor flickered at once. The wolves above her went silent. A deeper silence followed, the kind that did not mean peace, but arrival. Outside, the iron gates of Silverpine opened with a long, low cry. Emily closed her eyes. Alpha King Nathaniel Cross had entered the pack. The kitchen seemed to shrink around Emily as the sound of the iron gates rolled through the pack house. Then came the first bell from the courtyard, deep and slow, calling every unmated wolf to the great hall. Emily waited until the boots moved away, until the pantry door opened and closed, until the kitchen was empty except for the soft hiss of rain against the windows. Only then did she push the loose boards aside and climb out from the dark space beneath the floor. But tonight, nothing was being summoned before a king. Emily touched the silver pendant at her throat and felt the familiar sting of cold magic beneath her fingertips. It kept her scent sealed so tightly that other wolves looked through her as if she were made of fog. The kitchen door swung open before she could step away. Madison Reed stood framed in the doorway, dressed in a white satin gown that shimmered like fresh snow beneath the lantern light. Behind her were 2 younger she-wolves, both smiling with the eager cruelty of girls who had never been told no. Madison's golden hair was pinned high, her neck bright with pearls, her eyes sharp with satisfaction when they found Emily standing alone. "There you are," Madison said softly. "The little ghost of Silverpine." Emily lowered her gaze. "I was cleaning the lower pantry. You were hiding." Madison crossed the room, her polished shoes clicking against the stone. "Do you understand what tonight means? The Alpha King is here. Every flaw in this pack becomes our shame. That includes you." Emily kept her breathing even, counting each inhale the way her grandmother had taught her. 4 heartbeats in, 4 heartbeats out. Do not answer pride with fear. Do not answer cruelty with truth. Madison reached out and hooked one finger beneath Emily's collar, tugging just hard enough to reveal the silver chain. The pendant slipped free, catching the light. The 2 girls behind her went still. "What is this?" Madison asked. Emily's hand rose instinctively, but Madison caught her wrist before she could cover it. "A charm." Madison's smile grew. "How interesting. A scentless omega wearing a charm to hide something." "It was my mother's," Emily whispered. "Please give it back." "Please," Madison repeated, turning the words sweet and ugly. "Listen to that." She begs like a mouse. She leaned closer, her perfume thick with roses and triumph. Tonight, you will stand in the great hall with everyone else. And when the king asks why Silverpine keeps an empty-blooded Omega in its house, you will kneel and prove there is nothing inside you worth fearing. Emily felt the pendant pulse once, colder than ice. Somewhere beyond the kitchen, another bell rang. This one was closer. The royal guard had entered the pack house. Madison's smile faltered at the sound, but only for a moment. She released Emily's wrist and stepped back. Fix your dress. Wipe the dust from your face. You are coming with us. Emily looked toward the rain-dark window, toward the forest beyond the courtyard wall, the place she had dreamed of running to since childhood. But the gates were open now, and a king who hunted by sound was already inside. So she followed Madison into the corridor, keeping her steps soft, her heart quieter than fear, and the pendant pressed against her skin like the last locked door between Emily Harper and whatever had been waiting for her all her life. Emily walked behind Madison Reed with her hands folded tightly at her waist, trying to make each step softer than the rain ticking against the windows. Tonight, no one dared play a single note. The silence felt arranged, deliberate, like a table set for judgment. Emily could hear the small things because everyone else was trying so hard not to make sound. If Emily noticed this much, what could Alpha King Nathaniel Cross hear from the other side of the building? The thought made her pendant turn cold again. Madison glanced back as if she could sense Emily's panic and enjoyed it. Keep your chin down, she murmured. No one wants to look at you unless they need a reminder of what failure looks like. Emily said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was not weakness when it was chosen. At the entrance to the great hall, 2 royal guards stood in dark coats trimmed with silver. Warm light spilled over Emily's worn gray dress, and the full weight of Silverpine turned toward her. The hall was crowded with nearly 200 wolves standing beneath antler chandeliers and old banners stitched with the Reed family crest. At the far end stood an empty black chair reserved for the king, raised on 3 shallow steps. Madison moved into the center of the room like she had been born beneath applause, though there was none. Her father, Alpha Reed, stood near the royal chair with a smile stretched too tightly across his face. When he saw Emily, his expression thinned. "Why is she here?" he asked. Madison placed a graceful hand on Emily's shoulder, guiding her forward just enough for everyone to see the dust still clinging to the hem of her dress. Because every unmated wolf was summoned, father. Even the scentless ones. A ripple of laughter moved through the hall, quiet at first, then braver when Alpha Reed did not stop it. Emily felt each sound touch her skin like cold rain. Madison tilted her head. Perhaps she should offer the king a welcome song. She has such a tiny voice. It will not disturb him. More laughter. Someone near the back whispered, "The ghost girl sings." Emily's throat tightened, but Madison's fingers pressed lightly into her shoulder. Not enough to hurt, only enough to remind her that refusal would become another spectacle. Emily looked at the empty royal chair, then at the candles trembling along the walls. She drew one careful breath. 4 heartbeats in, 4 heartbeats out. Then she sang. The first note was barely louder than a sigh, soft and clear, carrying an old lullaby from the mountains beyond Silverpine, a song about moonlight finding lost children and leading them home. The hall began to quiet. Not because they respected her. Not yet. Because the candles. Nearest, Emily shivered, as if a hidden breeze had passed through them. The chandelier flames leaned toward her. Even Madison's smile faded by a fraction. Emily stopped at once, fear closing around her ribs. But in the silence that followed, far beyond the closed doors, a pair of measured footsteps paused. Somewhere in the corridor, Alpha King Nathaniel Cross had heard her. The footsteps outside the great hall did not rush. They did not need to. Each one fell with calm, even weight, crossing the corridor like a verdict everyone could hear, but no one could escape. Emily stood in the center of the polished stone floor with her hands clenched in front of her, the last note of her mother's song still trembling somewhere behind her ribs. No one laughed now. Madison Reed looked from Emily to the doors, her expression caught between annoyance and fear. Alpha Reed lifted his chin and forced a smile, but the muscles along his jaw moved too quickly. He had heard it too. Something in Emily's voice had reached farther than it should have. Before anyone could speak, A small sound broke from the right side of the hall, thin and panicked. Emily turned. Near the long banquet table, a little boy no older than 7 staggered beside his mother, one hand pressed against his chest. His name was Noah Vale, a quiet pup from the laundry wing, too young to be standing among adults dressed for judgment. His cheeks were flushed, his eyes glassy, and the sharp artificial scent rolling from his collar made Emily's stomach twist. Scent tonic. Someone had given him too much of it, likely to make the weakest families seem stronger before the king. Noah tried to breathe, but the air caught in him with a small, frightened squeak. His mother reached for him, whispering his name, while the wolves around them stepped back as if embarrassment were contagious. Alpha Reed's smile hardened. "Take the child out," he said under his breath. Quietly, but no one moved quickly enough. No one wanted to be the person who caused disorder moments before the Alpha King entered. Emily felt the old ache open inside her, the same ache that had always answered pain before pride could silence it. She remembered being 10 years old, watching her mother kneel beside a sick pup while stronger wolves argued about protocol. "Help first, explain later," her mother had whispered. So Emily moved. Madison caught her sleeve. "Do not." Emily looked at the boy gasping beside the table, then gently pulled free. "He cannot wait." Her voice was soft, but it carried through the hall in a way that made several wolves turn. She crossed the room and knelt before Noah, careful not to startle him. "Look at me," she said. "Just me. Count with my hand." His mother stared at her with wet, desperate eyes. He was told it would make his scent brighter. "I did not know." "It is all right," Emily whispered, though it was not. She placed one palm near Noah's shoulder and lifted the other in front of his face, opening and closing her fingers in a slow rhythm. "Breathe in for 4. Hold for 2. Out for 6. You are safe." Noah tried. Failed. Tried again. The tonic's false sharpness stung Emily's nose even through the sealed emptiness of her own scent. She knew what she had to do, and fear slid through her like cold water. The pendant could calm the magic if it stayed closed. It could also block the part of her that soothed. Emily touched the silver charm at her throat. Madison's voice hissed behind her. "Emily Harper, stand up." Emily did not. She loosened the clasp for only one heartbeat. A thread of moon-cool warmth slipped from her skin, not enough to fill the hall, not enough for most wolves to understand, but enough for Noah to feel it. The boy's shoulders lowered. His breath found a rhythm. The candles nearest them bent gently toward Emily, their flames steadying instead of shaking. A hush spread across the room, deeper than fear now, touched with wonder no one wanted to name. Emily snapped the pendant closed and bowed her head before anyone could see her face. Noah's mother gathered him close, whispering thank you again and again. Emily rose quickly, hoping to disappear back into the line of servants. But the great doors opened before she could take a single step. Cold air entered first, then silence. Then Alpha King Nathaniel Cross walked into the hall, dressed in black, silver-eyed, and still as winter midnight. He did not look at Madison. He did not look at Alpha Reed. His head turned toward Emily, as if he had been following the sound of her soul all along. Alpha King Nathaniel Cross did not enter like the stories said kings entered. There were no trumpets, no roaring announcement, no command shouted over bowed heads. He stepped through the doors with 2 royal guards behind him and lifted one gloved hand. Every candle seemed to still. Every whisper died before it could become sound. The musicians near the wall lowered their instruments without being told, and the great hall became so quiet that Emily could hear rain sliding down the tall windows in silver threads. Nathaniel Cross was taller than most men in the room, dressed in a long black coat fastened with silver clasps. His dark hair brushed back from a face too calm to be gentle. His eyes were the strange part. Silver, not pale gray, not blue, but true silver, bright as moonlight on frozen water. They moved slowly across the hall, yet Emily felt as though they had already found every secret hiding there. Alpha Reed bowed first, too deep and too fast. "Your Majesty, Silverpine, is honored." Nathaniel did not answer at once. He stood at the threshold, listening. "No music," he said at last. His voice was low, controlled, and clear enough to cross the room without effort. No forced celebration. No unnecessary sound. Alpha Reed's smile twitched. "Of course, Your Majesty. We wished only to welcome you properly." A proper welcome does not require hiding what the room is feeling. The words settled over the hall like frost. Emily lowered her head, praying the line of servants would swallow her back into gray cloth and candle shadow. But Noah's mother was still holding her son near the banquet table, and Noah was still breathing evenly because of what Emily had done. The pendant at Emily's throat felt heavy, no longer cold, but awake. Nathaniel took one step forward, then another. He passed Madison without pausing. Then he looked toward Noah, who gave the child scent tonic. The question was soft. No one answered. Emily saw Alpha Reed's fingers tighten around the arm of the royal chair. Madison's eyes flicked toward a servant near the table, already searching for someone smaller to blame. Nathaniel turned his head slightly. I asked a simple question. The hall remained still. Then Noah, brave in the way only frightened children can be, whispered, "She helped me breathe." His small finger pointed directly at Emily. The entire room turned with him. Emily's pulse stumbled. She knew he did, because his eyes sharpened, not with anger, but with recognition. He looked at her fully now, and the space between them changed. But the king was listening past her dress, past her silence, past the locked silver charm at her throat. "You," he said. Emily swallowed. "Yes, your majesty." Nathaniel walked closer, stopping several feet away, respectful enough not to touch, close enough that the whole hall could see she was no longer invisible. "Your scent is empty," he said. A few wolves smiled, relieved to hear the insult confirmed. Then Nathaniel's gaze dropped to the pendant resting against her collarbone. "But your heart is not." The smiles vanished. Emily felt the charm pulse once, and somewhere deep inside her chest, something answered him like a hidden bell. For a moment, Emily forgot the room existed. There was only the silver gaze of Nathaniel Cross, the pendant warming beneath her fingers, and the impossible feeling that something inside her had leaned toward him without permission. Then Alpha Reed stepped between them with a laugh too polished to be honest. "Your Majesty has a remarkable ear," he said, spreading his hands as though this were all part of a harmless misunderstanding. "The girl is unusual, yes, but harmless. A servant with a sentimental charm and a talent for drawing attention at the wrong time." Emily lowered her eyes, but she felt Nathaniel's attention remain on her like moonlight through glass. "Harmless people are rarely hidden under floorboards," the king said. The room inhaled. Emily's blood went cold. He had heard that too. Not seen it. Not been told. Heard it. Somehow, from the moment he crossed the gates. Alpha Reed's smile thinned. "She has always been troublesome. Nervous. Disobedient in quiet ways. We keep her close for her own safety." Madison stepped forward before her father could lose control of the story. Her white gown whispered across the stone, soft as falling snow. "Your Majesty, may I speak?" Nathaniel did not look at her. "You may tell the truth." Madison's face tightened, but she bowed her head. "Emily Harper has no scent, no proper place, and no family willing to claim responsibility for her. Tonight, she interfered with a child during the royal welcome. We do not know what she did to him. We only know the candles moved, and the room changed." Emily looked toward Noah, who clung to his mother's sleeve with wide eyes. His mother opened her mouth, but fear closed it again. Emily did not blame her. In Silverpine, truth was expensive, and the poor were rarely allowed to pay for it. Alpha Reed seized the silence. "The charm should be inspected. If it carries forbidden magic, then Silverpine must be cleared of suspicion immediately." Cleared of suspicion. Emily understood then. Her shame was useful. Her silence had made her easy to offer. All the strange tonic, the forced ceremony, the hidden panic in the pack house, all of it could be placed in her small hands and called proof. Madison turned to the hall, her voice sweet enough to sting. "Let her kneel. Let her remove the pendant before everyone. If she is empty, she has nothing to fear." A murmur spread through the crowd. Empty. Nothing to fear. The old words found Emily like stones in a riverbed. She remembered every time they had called her ghost girl, moon mistake, scentless thing. She remembered her grandmother pressing the silver charm into her palm the night her mother died. Never let them take it from you in fear. If it opens in fear, they will only see power. They will not see you. Nathaniel moved one step, but Alpha Reed raised his hand toward the royal guards, as if requesting order. "Emily Harper," he said loudly, "kneel before your king and remove the charm." The command struck the hall with terrible force. Emily's knees weakened, not from obedience, but from the weight of every "I" turning her into an answer she did not want to give. She looked at Noah. He was breathing because she had chosen kindness over safety. She looked at Madison. She saw triumph waiting there, bright and hungry. Then she looked at Nathaniel. His face was still, but his silver eyes had darkened, listening to something no one else could hear. Emily slowly touched the clasp at the back of her neck. The pendant burned warm now, almost alive. The great hall became so quiet that even the rain seemed to pause against the windows. Her fingers trembled around the chain. One pull, and the secret her mother had died protecting would belong to everyone. Emily's fingers rested on the clasp, but she could not make them move. The silver chain had been with her through every cold morning in the servant quarters, every insult swallowed behind closed lips. Every night she had cried without making a sound. It was not only metal. It was her mother's last promise, her grandmother's warning, the small locked door between Emily and a world that had never been gentle with anything rare. Alpha Reed's voice cut through the quiet. "Remove it." Madison smiled as if the command had already become victory. Around the hall, the wolves leaned in, hungry for proof, hungry for scandal, hungry for one more reason to believe the girl they had mocked was exactly as small as they had always said. Emily's hand trembled once. Then Nathaniel Cross spoke. "Let her keep it." The words were quiet, but they stopped the room more completely than a shout ever could. Alpha Reed turned toward him, startled. "Your Majesty, with respect, if she is hiding magic from the crown." "I said let her keep it." Nathaniel did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The silence bent around him. Emily let her hand fall from the clasp, breath shaking in her chest. She looked up before she could stop herself. Nathaniel was watching her, not like a judge studying guilt, but like a man listening to music everyone else had mistaken for noise. "I do not need her scent," he said. A ripple moved through the hall. Madison's smile faded. "Every wolf has a scent," she said carefully. "Every honest wolf." Nathaniel's eyes moved to her at last, and the color drained from her face. "Scent is the easiest thing in this room to fake." He turned slowly, his gaze passing over the gathered pack. Perfume, tonics, charms, fear covered with pride, ambition covered with roses, lies covered with pine smoke. Several wolves shifted where they stood. Emily saw Alpha Reed's hand tighten behind his back. Nathaniel took one step closer to her, stopping at a respectful distance. But sound is different. Emily could hear her own breathing now, thin and uneven. "A frightened heart can be trained to slow," he continued. "A guilty one can learn to stay steady. A cruel voice can learn to sound kind." His silver eyes softened by the smallest degree. "But a soul has a sound beneath all of that. Most are scattered. Some are dim. Yours has been locked away for so long that it learned to sing through the cracks." Emily felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but from the terrible relief of being seen without being exposed. Madison gave a sharp laugh, brittle as ice. "That is impossible. She is a servant. She is nothing." Noah's small voice rose from beside his mother. "She helped me." His mother finally found her courage and stepped forward, holding the boy close. "She saved my son from the tonic." No one else moved. The hall shifted again, but this time the sound was different. Less certain, less cruel. Nathaniel looked at Emily's pendant. "You opened the charm for one heartbeat," he said. "Not to impress me, not to defend yourself, to help a child breathe." Emily whispered, "I was afraid." "I know." His voice lowered. "I heard that too." Something in those words reached the place in her that had been bracing for punishment her whole life. Emily looked down, but not in shame this time. She looked down because the pendant had begun to glow faintly beneath her fingers, a soft moonlit light pulsing in time with the hidden bell inside her chest. Nathaniel's expression changed. For the first time since entering Silverpine, the king looked less like winter and more like a man who had found something he had nearly stopped hoping for. "Emily Harper," he said, and her name in his voice made the entire hall go still. "Whatever they buried inside you is not a crime." The pendant warmed brighter. Nathaniel's calm. Emily heard it at last, a second sound answering hers from across the silence. The second sound was not loud. It did not come from the chandeliers or the rain-dark windows or the crowded hall holding its breath around her. It came from Nathaniel Cross, hidden beneath the calm rhythm of his breathing, a low and aching resonance that answered the glow beneath Emily's pendant like the other half of a forgotten song. Emily stared at him, unable to move. All her life, she had been told that her silence meant emptiness. Now the most feared king in the Northern Territories was standing before her, as if her silence had been calling him by name. Alpha Reed saw it too, and fear changed his face faster than pride could hide it. "This is a trick," he said, but his voice no longer filled the room. It wavered at the edges. "Your Majesty, she has bewitched the hall somehow. She has bewitched the child. Perhaps even you." A quiet murmur moved through the wolves, but it did not rise. Nathaniel did not look away from Emily. "Careful," he said. "There are sounds a man makes when he is protecting his people, and sounds he makes when he is protecting his secrets. Yours has never been the first." Alpha Reed went pale. Madison stepped forward, desperation brightening her eyes. "Father is only trying to protect Silverpine." Her gaze flashed to Emily's pendant. "If she has nothing to hide, let the charm prove it." Before anyone could stop her, Madison reached for the chain. Emily moved back, but the pendant slipped free of her fingers. The silver clasp opened with a tiny click, so small that no one should have heard it, yet the sound seemed to travel through every stone in the hall. The charm fell into Emily's palm, open at last. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the air changed. Not with a storm, not with fire, with moonlight. A cool, luminous scent unfolded from Emily like dawn over snow-covered pine, clean and bright and heartbreakingly gentle. It carried the memory of rain on wild flowers, of cedar smoke after a winter night, of a lullaby sung beside a sickbed by a mother who had known her daughter would one day need to be brave. Wolves throughout the hall lowered their eyes, not because they were forced, but because the feeling was too pure to mock. Noah smiled through his tears. His mother covered her mouth. Madison stepped back as if the truth had taken the floor from beneath her. Emily stood trembling in the center of it all, terrified that this beauty would become another reason to cage her. Then Nathaniel moved. He did not seize her, did not command her, did not claim what she had not offered. He simply stepped between Emily and the room, placing himself before her like a door closing against a bitter wind. His silver eyes shone brighter, and for the first time, the court saw their king not as a legend, but as a man struggling to remain steady under the weight of recognition. "Enough," he said. The word was quiet, final, and every whisper died. Alpha Reed bowed his head, but Nathaniel's gaze stayed on the pack. "For years, you called her empty because you could not understand what had been protected. You mistook restraint for weakness. You mistook gentleness for shame." Emily felt the open pendant warm in her hand, its light reflecting along Nathaniel's black sleeve. He turned slightly, just enough that his voice softened for her alone, while still carrying to every corner of the hall. "Emily Harper, they were wrong." Her breath caught. The hidden bell inside her answered him again, and this time Nathaniel's own calm cracked by the smallest degree. Beneath the cuff of his glove, a dark mark glimmered at his wrist, faint as ink beneath ice. He covered it quickly, but Emily had seen. So had he. The moonlit scent around her deepened, and the king who had come to judge Silverpine looked at her as if she had just awakened both his hope and his curse. Emily did not understand the mark on Nathaniel's wrist, but she understood the way he tried to hide it. She had spent her whole life hiding things that frightened other people. The dark shimmer beneath his glove was not a wound anyone in Silverpine had the courage to name. It moved like ink under winter ice, pulsing once in answer to the moonlit scent still unfolding from her skin. Nathaniel lowered his hand, but not before Alpha Reed saw enough to become very still. "Your Majesty," Reed said carefully, "perhaps the girl should be confined until your council can examine what she has done." The word confined passed through Emily like the slam of an old door. For one foolish moment, she had believed being seen might mean being safe. But the hall was already turning again, fear searching for a cage to build around the miracle it could not explain. Madison stood near her father with both hands clenched in the folds of her white gown, her perfect face pale with anger. "She opened forbidden magic in front of the crown," she said. Everyone saw it. Noah's mother lifted her chin. "I saw her save my son." Her voice shook, but it did not break. "I saw the rest of us stand back." That quiet confession did more than any shout could have done. Heads lowered. Eyes moved away. Shame entered the hall softly, like morning light finding dust in a room no one had cleaned. Nathaniel looked across Silverpine, and when he spoke, his voice carried no rage, only truth sharpened by restraint. This pack will answer for the tonic given to a child, for the false reports sent to my court, and for the years spent burying an Omega whose only crime was being born beyond your understanding. Alpha Reed bowed stiffly. Of course, Your Majesty. Not to me, Nathaniel said. To her. The hall froze. Emily's breath caught as every face turned toward her once more, but this time the silence did not feel like mockery. It felt uncertain, human, fragile. Alpha Reed looked as if the words had been carved from stone and placed at his feet. Madison's lips parted, but no sound came out. Nathaniel turned toward Emily. The cold authority in him softened, not into weakness, but into something more dangerous to all who had dismissed her. Respect. Emily Harper, he said. You are under the protection of the crown from this moment forward. No one in Silverpine will command you to kneel again. Emily's fingers closed around the open pendant. Her mother's charm had gone warm and quiet in her palm, as if its work was finally done. She wanted to speak, to say thank you, to ask why his curse had answered her, to ask what would happen now that the whole room knew she was not empty. But her voice stayed, trapped behind years of careful silence. Nathaniel seemed to hear that too. He stepped closer, still leaving space between them, and offered his hand with his palm open. Not a demand, not a claim, a choice. You do not have to trust me tonight, he said, low enough that only she could hear. But you should know why I came to Silverpine. Emily looked at his hand, then at the faint darkness glowing beneath his cuff. For the rebels? She whispered. Nathaniel's silver eyes held hers. That is what I told my court. The candles around them bent toward Emily one last time, their flames bright and steady. Then why? She asked. For the first time, the Alpha King looked almost afraid. Because 3 nights ago, I heard a song in my sleep. A soul calling from this pack house. Yours. Emily's heart struck once, clear as a bell. Nathaniel heard it, and the mark beneath his glove flared softly in answer. Your scent called my wolf, he said. But your soul woke the curse. The hall disappeared around her. The rain, the banners, the people who had once made her feel small. All of it faded beneath the impossible truth standing before her. Emily Harper had spent 10 years hiding so she could survive. Now the king who had found her was not asking for her surrender. He was asking her to walk into a destiny that might save them both.